was originally thought. So what are we doing about that question? We can do a project, right? We thought maybe we'll do a project somewhere in the watershed that can help reduce nutrients and all that. So we went out and we installed a level logger. This is just a pressure transducer you see over there. It measures the pressure of the water. As the water gets deeper, it measures higher pressure. So it actually can convert that to the depth of the water. Then we put a staff gauge out there, which just tells us the depth of the water at that time. So we're doing that continuously on Laura's property. Thank you for listening to that. And trying to get a sense for how much flow is coming out of that dam drain. And I'll tell you why flow is important. We're also doing water quality during that time. Okay, this is what it looks like out there. We're doing lake level too, so that's a lake level monitor in the bottom picture. In the top picture, that's kind of how we had it set up out there. Then we'll go out and do field measurements. They use a flow meter or velocity meter, and they go do a cross section and measure velocity, and then we can really those to flow. Okay, so we need 2 years of data to really make this work. Where are we at? We got some pretty good variability in stage. This is the mandarin stage. Notice you can see the storms come in. We were really dry the first half of the season. You can see that, and the decreasing stage of the mandarin. When storms came in, we started to see pulse of water. We've got to start to a rating curve. I'm calling this all provisional, because until we get another year of more points on here, I don't really know. You can see there's some kind of odd points that we need to go through. But what we do is we say, this is the measured flow that we had, and we regress that versus stage, apply it to this. Now I have an hourly or a daily flow going through the dam drain. And then I can take that and calculate volume. I can say, this is how many acre feet of water came off of that watershed and into the lake. Okay? If it's only a small amount, then it's really not going to affect anything on a big basis, because it's diluted out for the whole watershed. Okay? If it's really high concentration, small amount of water, that can be a problem. Right? You get a lot of water, small concentration. So we calculate load to do that. Okay. So what are some of the results? Well, the first half of the year, all the way to the end of June, phosphorus concentration is really low coming out of the drain. We didn't have a lot of rain coming in. This is base flow, right? There wasn't a lot of flow coming out of there, so it was pretty low, but it was actually pretty low. There was a fair amount of what I would call a dissolved fraction of phosphorus. This is a phosphorus fraction that's not adhered to a particulate, and it can grow algae right away. So if it's on particulate, it's not necessarily available for algal growth. If it's dissolved, it's available for algal growth. So some of these concentrations were actually pretty high. 75 micrograms per liter, that's a pretty high concentration. Okay, so that's making me think, okay, what's going on in the mandrain? We see this out of wetlands a lot. The mandrain comes through a big wetland. Wetlands actually convert particulate phosphorus into dissolved fractions. It's a new research area, so maybe we can do something about that. And then we've got in the second half of the season, we have some higher concentrations, 148 micrograms per liter, 176, or 81. Those make me go, okay, we need to think about how the loading might be happening for the mandrain. Maybe it's a source. Please don't run with that. Right? These are just surprising. First half is low. I was like, I don't know what it is. Second half is higher than what we measured before. So we're going to get another year of data, and then we can compare that to the flow, and I can calculate the mass of phosphorus coming off the land and into the lake. Okay? Hang on a second. Let me get through a couple concepts I'll get to. Okay? So again, those concentrations. I got the wrong plot there, sorry. You had some old data that was really high. These were thrown out because the reporting limit was like, they just put it at the reporting limit, and the back of the line was. My guess is at a really high 4 milligrams per liter. If you're not really careful, I'm really on my field staff. If you test the bottom of the channel or something like that, and get a bunch of mud in there, you can totally skew your values. So I'm not sure that that's a value, but most of these values of phosphorus were about 100 or less. What I just showed you was a bunch of values that were well above 100. So by that benchmark, there are some periods where high concentrations are coming out of there. So that might be something we can do something about. Oh, there it is. I put it in there twice. You can see most of the concentrations I mentioned before were less than 100 micrograms per liter. If I'm less than 100 micrograms per liter, here's what I can tell you about that. One is from a regional standpoint for unimpacted watersheds, that's not that high. Okay? Two is the lower the concentration is, the harder it is to remove from water. So if I'm I'm trying to take 100 micrograms to 50 micrograms or 50 micrograms to 25, every time I do that step down, it's harder and harder to efficiently remove that phosphorus out of the water column. It gets more expensive, the technology becomes more robust, all these types of things. So even if we get a project and we're running between 100 to 200 micrograms per liter, we might be able to get it down to 100. But going from 100 down below that is going to be really challenging from a technology standpoint or an efficiency standpoint. Okay? Yeah.
I think the filter was in place in 15, 17, 18 still.
I think that's right. And there was really no discernible change in the phosphorus concentration.
Okay.
Yeah, it came out at the beginning of 18, I believe.
Yeah.
Beginning of that summer.
So again, it's very hard when you're at 100 micrograms per liter to take it down to 50. You can have a really good filter that might work at higher concentrations. So a salesman might come into you and say, look, I have this sock, it'll take it down from 500 micrograms per liter to 250. I'm like, that's great if you're dealing with wastewater. Can it take 100 down to 50? Right? But these are things you have to kind of, when we're thinking through all these different ways of doing remediation, these are things we got to think about. So I just want to touch on this, and then I'll get to some questions, I think, on this concept. Is the concept of load versus concentration. If we saw really high concentrations coming out of the watershed, right? Well, what happens with those concentrations is you take that volume of water and that concentration and you mix it with what's already in the lake. And by mixing those two together, you calculate a new concentration that is more dilute. So if I only add 1% of phosphorus into this concentration, it's not going to change that original concentration. So if I have a lot of water that's coming in at low concentration, that's good for my lake. It'll dilute everything out. If I have a lot of water coming in at high concentration, it's going to keep pushing the good water out and reflect that water. So we can't just look at the concentration of the main drain and say, that's a problem, right? What we have to do is we have to calculate the load with the flow and then mix that into the lake as a reactor and calculate those resulting concentrations. That is how it works. That's why we're monitoring flow and concentration in the main drain this year. Okay? So I know it's kind of a nerdy concept to go through, but it's really important to talk about those management. We always talk about phosphorus loading. So when you hear me talk about it, I'll talk about how many kilograms of phosphorus per year that you enter this lake. And that matters more than some of the other stuff.
We have to have this type of measurement in order to, if there is a problem, to appeal to Eagle. That's all they will listen to is this type of data.
Yes. And quite honestly, there's some question now that you're in a government lake board and an official stat. There was some question in the Michigan Lake and Stream Conference about whether those dollars can be used for a watershed project. So I was talking to Jeff Van Bell about that. Is there's some legal hoops that we're going to have to jump through in terms of how you can use stat dollars if we decide we want to pursue a project in there. But there's other pots of money. He has some dollars for maintenance for the main drain because it is an official drain. So it's going to take some work to figure out how we make a project happen. But let's first make sure we have convincing evidence to the players that are going to make those decisions.
Have we pulled samples for the drain?
For this year, yes. Yep, it's been installed. Tommy went out a couple weeks ago. Installed the equipment and pulled the first sample. I have not seen the results yet. I don't think we've heard of the final result. But we've started that process. Okay. Any questions on the nutrient part yet?
I was looking at the dates and just observing last year they did a lot of clearing drains going on roads in this area. And the source of this main drain tends to be about a half mile away Lake Road off to the east end.
Yep.
It's a large trophicated area that probably was a lake at some point. And they re-cleared that.
They did. Okay.
And so could that be, when I went to Google Earth, I'm looking at farm fields all around the ridge. So stuff goes down.
Possible, yeah. No, that's absolutely, thank you for letting me know that. That's the kind of information we'll need to talk to the county, or if you know about that, to help us interpret it, right? So we see all some really high concentrations, but they're doing a bunch of clearing in the ditches. We have to kind of put that caveat.
And I stopped and actually got out of the car and watched the flow was going evenly.
Yeah, okay. Yep, that's good to know, so thank you. Other questions about nutrients? We're almost done here. It's a lot. LEC meet once or twice a year, so we have a lot to talk about. Okay, so let's talk about the action plan. Remember, we're doing everything adaptive management. It's really hard. Like, I wish that lakes were super predictable, or if I was really good at predicting exactly what a lake's going to do, I'd be a lot richer than I am now, because I could fix a lot more lakes. But really what we have to do is we set a plan, we design a strategy, that's our 5-year plan. We're implementing and monitoring that and evaluating how that's going, and we're responding to that. So we're in this cycle here. At the end of that 5-year plan, we say where are we at, what's the next priority, and then we move into that set. Okay, so that's why we're doing this. We're data-driven. We're driven by science. We're letting the data that we collect and the results of our actions drive our next management decisions. And remember that that high phosphorus concentration with the low plant density, that's concerning, right? We want those plants back. Everything, whenever we're doing this, I'm always trying to balance that aquatic life needs for the plants, our desired recreational uses for a lake, and those ecosystem services that are needed for that, okay? So I just don't want you to forget about those other pieces. We can say, oh, I just want to be able to see at every square inch of my lake. Sure, I would love for you to be able to do that, but the lake may not support that. So what we're trying to do here is balance all those things, not damage ecosystem services or water quality so much that, because we're trying to get all the plants out of the water, but not having so many plants that we can't enjoy the lake we want, the way we want to, okay? So what's our strategy for this year? We'll continue that water quality monitor demand journey. The spring vegetation survey will be out next week, so that'll give you a really good sense of where the plant community is going and what our actions might be. We'll continue that demand during storm sampling. We'll do it whenever we do the lake sampling, we do a baseline sampling, and we're going to try to target 3 or 4 storms this year. That's what we tried. Got 3 last year, hopefully we can get 4 this year. Water quality monitoring for phytoplankton, we're going to try to do that in June, July, August, and then maybe September. I get less worried, and you can tell me if I'm wrong on this, I get less worried after Labor Day because the recreational use goes down in the lake, right? That doesn't mean it's any less dangerous. In fact, I think September is probably the riskiest month in terms of that. But we're going to really focus on that midsummer when the lake is heavily used to make sure that we understand and try to get some data about what other things that's going on. Okay, and then at the end of the year, by February 2025, we should have all those load calculations done. I'll plug those into a lake response model, one that I built for you in 2021 when we did the original plan, and start to assess what the role of the land training is. And then we'll do that fall vegetation survey again, see if we're getting the natives back the way we want, and then we're keeping irregular milfoil excluded. Okay. Just so you know, irregular milfoil goes through 2 growth cycles. It goes through a spring growth cycle and a fall growth cycle. So sometimes fall treatments can be really effective too. So if we see it this fall coming back, I may want to hit it hard because I don't want it to store those carbohydrates and be able to regrow in the spring. So we're just kind of always thinking about how are we trying to prevent it from getting. And that's all I got. Thanks for your